Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is Your Story, Your Grief, Your Journey. Our topic is intergenerational trauma and grief. Let's welcome the star of our show. It's Mr. Doug Lawrence. Hello, Doug.
Hello, and hello to our listening and viewing audience across the world. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for what's going to be a very interesting conversation. So thank you. And if you don't get the chance to view us live, you can always go to the USA Global TV YouTube channel and connect with us there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're also live streaming to Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck YouTube channel as well. So plenty of places for people to see us. Doug, you're the founder of TalentC, and you're also an international certified mentor and an international best-selling author. What was it that made you want to do this live broadcast show to help other people who are dealing with similar instances of losing someone?
I guess the short answer to that is that my purpose in life is to help people heal from the various traumas that they go through from mental health and all sorts of other ways that they end up having to be exposed or experience trauma. So for me, it was all about, I've gone through some of this myself, and so it was about being able to sort of give back and help people on their healing journey.
And we're so glad that you are here and that you have been sharing. And sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. I know both of us start to feel a lot of emotions coming up. So I really appreciate your taking the time emotionally as well as physically to be here. So our topic is intergenerational trauma and grief. What does that mean to you, intergenerational, when you think about it?
Well, for me, what intergenerational means, and the perfect example is I think of my own family situation, and I think of my grandfather who had mental health issues, and as a result of that, his two sons ended up with having to deal with the trauma of the loss of him at a relatively very early age. And so it ends up where the behaviors and that just continue to kind of go down the food chain, for lack of a better choice of words. So my grandfather had some issues, and they ended up being stuff that his two sons ended up dealing with, which then had an impact on even myself, on how I dealt with certain things, and the things I got to see, like alcohol, turning to alcohol as a way to deal with different situations, when in fact that's just a mask to deal with it. But it was all, then it came to me to, my generation to be able to deal with that. And then now, I'm trying to be very mindful of what's taking place even with my own children, so that they don't follow in that same path. So it goes from one generation to the next.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find, because we just had a discussion about this on an earlier show, that younger people are more the same amounts, they have the same amount of awareness about death because of the pandemic. So in other words, it used to be, okay, my grandmother, my grandfather, they lived to be so many years of age, and now, but people died at all different ages, and people who had probably nothing wrong with them initially from the pandemic maybe became overwhelmed with grief from losing a job or losing their income or losing a loved one. And so younger people were more exposed to it because of everyone living at home.
I, I don't necessarily say that that's the case. I think that the younger generation, yeah, they've been exposed, and the COVID is a perfect example of how something that has such a global impact can impact all of us in one way, shape, or form, and sometimes that can also be, the loss of a good friend, the loss of a family member, and so on, and then having to figure out or having to deal with the grief that goes along with that. I think that, because when I think back to when I was younger and growing up and stuff like that, and people passed away, like say from, for example, cancer, it was, nobody really spent a whole lot of time trying to sort out, what was it that this person passed away. It was just that, this individual passed away. And that was the end of it. And they did their grieving, which wasn't what we know it to be today. And so I want to be able to say that I think that our younger generation is in a better place as far as being able to deal with that. But I also think at the same time that they have a different approach to death than what, say, the rest of us maybe do, or other generations. And it's such that I openly talk about, the aspect of grief and death, and I'm okay with where I, may very well end up. But I don't always see that in some of the younger generation where, having that conversation like what we're doing right now, an open and frank conversation about grief and death and all of that. You don't see a lot of that taking place with certainly the younger generation.
Thanks, Doug. I think one of the first experiences that we have with death can be the loss of a pet. If you think about it, when you're a child and pet passed away, and then somebody has to explain. For me, it was actually the loss of my grandfather, and it was in 1968, and I was 5 years old, and I remember it. Nobody wanted to tell me what was going on. I was supposed to stay downstairs in the basement, but I managed to climb the stairs and peer around the wall, and I saw him lying on the sofa, and he didn't look very well, and I was afraid. And of course, nobody told me. And then, of course, I was just told that he's not here anymore. So there was really no explanation about what exactly happened. How important do you think that is for a young person to understand? And how much do you tell them about the death, the passing away of a loved one in their family?
Well, and that's a good question, because I think of my two grandchildren and how my daughter has prepared them for, the loss of their grandmother when Deborah passed, and every so often, they'll come up to me and say, we really miss Grandma. We wish Grandma was here, and so I think depending upon how parents prepare their children for having to deal with grief and the loss of, say, in this case, their grandmother, I think a lot of that will sort of gives them the foundation as they get older to be able to deal with things and not be afraid to talk about it, which is something that I think that you see fairly regularly, is that when it comes to death and grief and all of that, we still were reluctant to talk about it. and, have those conversations, with them. Certainly when I think of my two grandchildren, they've had the conversations, and, they'll come and sit beside me on the couch and say, we wish grandma was here. And, all of those sorts of conversations that, help them deal with what's going through their mind at that particular time point as well.
How does that make you feel, Doug, when they ask about her?
It's tough. It's I'm glad that my daughter, that she has taken the time to prepare them that, grandma's not coming back. She's gone. And I think they understand all of that. What I sense is that there is a greater, there's how would I word this? They're more, they want to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to grandpa. That's the main thing. So, they will demonstrate their compassion. They'll demonstrate their love and all of that. And sometimes, they'll come sit beside you for 5 or 10 minutes and it may be that we miss grandma and we wish, she was here. And then they're off to go back to play and do whatever else they wanted to do. But they do still acknowledge fairly regularly that, something's missing and it's grandma.
Thanks for sharing that, Doug. I'm wondering, because I've heard this before from people, their children will ask, where's so-and-so? They're not here, but we will be seeing them again in another lifetime. We will be reunited. And then that gives some kind of peace, I'm told, that the child doesn't have to worry that the person's gone forever. They're just gone for now, but will be reunited. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I think it depends on the parents themselves and how well they've prepared their children to have that sort of conversation. I don't know that. I think it has to be sort of case by case situation where the parents hopefully will have a good understanding of how well their children will take to that, and telling. My concern is I keep thinking of my grandson, who is a question person. He's only 6 years old, and he will be constantly asking questions about different things. And if you give him an answer, then he'll come back to you and say, well, why is that? And so if you go down that road with him, you have to be prepared that it's not a short journey, it's a longer journey. And there's going to be lots of questions and stuff that you have to be able to respond to. And once you've started down that road, simply saying, well, that's just the way it is, or coming up with a kind of a flaky type of an answer, that's not going to be good enough for him.
I'm smiling here because I know people like that also. And it's just, they're really drilling down, and they're putting you there with your back against the wall sometimes. But at the same point, they want an honest answer. And so we have to give it. So I'm also wondering, when we think about younger people, and I remember thinking this to myself, oh, I'm going to live forever. I'm only, X number of years old, and I still have all these years left. But death is not selective. It can happen. It will happen to all of us. So what are some steps that we can take? You talked about your daughter and preparing her children, your grandchildren. What can we do as individuals at any age to prepare for death? Because that doesn't mean if you're 50 or 60 years old that you're prepared. You can say to yourself, oh, I'm going to make it till 90 because mom and dad lived to be whatever age. I'm not going to think about that right now.
Well, and what you've just described is the idea that we have of the whole intergenerational thing. So, because, my parents lived to be 85 or 90 years of age. Therefore, I will probably follow in their footsteps and be much the same. And that there's nothing further from the truth than what that is because you don't really know. And, I've had some health scares that have sort of fast tracked my thinking of, my whole idea around, from a spiritual perspective, my whole idea around, what does death mean to me, and how am I going to deal with it, and how do I prepare myself? And, in some cases it can be, how do I prepare others around me who are going to, certainly be involved in the aftermath of my life ending. So there's a number of different things that we have to take into account. And I know, there's obviously the spiritual view and the religious view, and you have to decide sort of whereabouts you are, because that's part of the story that you're going to tell.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't really think about it as much as I probably should, because it's not pleasant. But I guess I've heard from other people, if you believe that there is an afterlife and you do believe in God and you believe in heaven, and that it's not as scary because you believe that there is something else. And I know you've talked about this as well.
Yeah, I have. And full disclosure, I'm definitely very spiritual, and I think what's enhanced that, and it's sort of one of the things that they say, that when people go through either a near death experience or an actual, having to grieve the loss of somebody, it kind of gets you thinking about, okay, what does all this mean, and all that. And I'm quite comfortable. I'm quite comfortable with, if it's my time, so be it, let it be. But what's interesting was, I've shared this on previous shows, what's helped me a lot is I went through a past life regression with a hypnotherapist, and as a result of doing that, I know that my calling, my purpose in life is to be a healer. And I know that if I am to fulfill that purpose, that calling, that there's going to be a time frame that I'm given in order to do that. And then when it is time, that I will be given a message that's going to tell me, okay, you've done what you've been asked to do, and therefore it's time for you to move on to greener pastures.
And when you're hearing yourself say that, how are you feeling about it? Is there anything coming up for you, or do you feel confident about it? Are there any questions that you have?
What I feel is, I feel at peace, knowing that when my time is up and I'm called to something else, hopefully, that I'm at peace with whatever takes place. And it gives me a feeling of peace and solitude, but it also gives me a sense or a feeling of lightness, I guess. I don't feel things are weighing me down. I feel open, and I feel I'm in a good space.
And that's got to be a kind of big relief, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a big relief, but it's also challenging too, because I know that the expectation from our purpose or calling is that I'm to do some good things over the course of the next little while. And, you sort of go, well, what if the pieces to the puzzle don't fall in place, and I'm not able to deliver on what's expected?
Very true. And, we've talked about the younger generations, but what about the older generation? The older generation who's watched their friends pass away. They've gone to funeral after funeral, and they wonder, wow, why am I still here? What is my purpose? And I've actually seen this myself, that there's an element of fear because everything that they've experienced in life is over. And there's a chapter now where you're just basically waiting.
And that's tough. That's tough because I know I've gone through and experienced similar things where a lot of people that I know have passed away, and you kind of wonder, well, is this a sign or a signal that I'm kind of next? And I think that what I know, what works for me may not work for the next person, but I definitely, through my spiritualness and through prayer and stuff like that, I'm always kind of checking in or asking the question, am I doing what is expected? And if so, or if not, then what else can I do to help fulfill my calling, my purpose, and being able to do that. So, and I do know as we get older that the question of when are we going to pass and all that sort of thing, I'm a firm believer that when it's my time, I will know, and that as long as, for me anyhow, as long as I've prepared myself for that it won't be as scary as what it could very well be.
I'm breathing a sigh of relief over here, Doug. So there's comfort in what you're sharing. So if we go back to families, or we go back to more than one person living in a home, do you think that if we're talking about adults only, that you need to have similar mindsets about the next chapter? So in other words, if one person is very religious and believes certain things are going to happen, and the other person's an atheist and believes different things, do you think you need to flesh that out in the beginning so that you can have a cohesive relationship? Because we are going to die at some point, and if you're really at odds on what you think about that, that can be a problem.
It comes back to our favorite topic, and that's communication. And I know that, let me word it this way. If I had somebody living with me today, and no matter what religion they choose to believe in or to worship, we would be definitely having the conversation about, here are my expectations should I pass away tomorrow, and conversely, help me understand what your expectations are should you pass away tomorrow, so that both of us are on the same page from a understanding what the other person wants, rather than it being something that you kind of, I think of something like I remember when my mom passed away, and they didn't have the greatest will. That was because we ended up having to have a lot of conversations about different things as far as what the expectations were for a celebration of life and all that sort of stuff. And then when it came to, it was a lesson for my dad, because he all of a sudden saw that if things aren't documented properly, that there's all this wiggle room, and that's not always the way the way you want things, because you obviously are hoping that that's going to all fall into place nice and neat and tidy, and the attention is going to be on celebrating the life of a loved one versus trying to sort out all the different things, who gets what and all that sort of stuff, and are we doing a celebration of life, or are we doing a church service, or what are we, all those different things, they're all sorted out beforehand. And that by itself does bring an element of a peace of mind.
It definitely does. And you've just touched on something I've witnessed myself, that some people do not want to talk about death at all. And it is a conversation that is not appreciated, and it is not one that is welcomed. And that makes it kind of difficult. So, any advice you have for people experiencing that with someone in their home or their loved one?
You know, I would do it. I would flip it. I would put myself in that position to be able to kind of draw them into the conversation. And it can be something as simple as, you know, I've been thinking the last little while as a result of the passing of my mom that, you know, we found that there were a lot of things that weren't addressed prior to her passing. And I want to make sure that I don't make the same error in judgment and deal with it that way. The other thing I know that even thinking of Deborah's passing, we'd had conversations before she passed, but she also had conversations with, you know, other people as well. And what came back to me was that as a result of her passing and all the things that we ended up having to deal with and all of that, that it was a valuable learning experience for them to have to spend some time and focus on some of the things that we hadn't prepared for. And by doing that, it was a life learning experience for them, you know, kind of feeding off of all the steps that had to be addressed with, say, the passing of Deborah or the passing of my mom. You know, it could be any of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I've heard people say that when they bring up the topic with a loved one, that a response might be, "Oh, you just want my money. You can't wait till I'm gone so that you can take everything that I've worked so hard." What is the feeling that that person is expressing? Is that fear?
I think it is, but you know, I do know, you know, from other experiences that money does play a part in, you know, in all of this, and that really shouldn't be that way, but human nature being what it is, I guess, we sometimes think that, you know, we wonder when someone's going to pass away because we know they have, you know, all their prized possessions, money included, are going to be, you know, divvied up amongst the rest of us, so to speak, and we lose track of that grandchild who has the purest of intention, the purest of heart, to be able to say, "I miss grandma," as an example. And we sometimes put the money and all that other stuff before that, and we don't think about, you know, what they're going to be hearing, all the adult type conversations, and they're, you know, going to be, I know my grandson would be sort of saying, "Well, this doesn't seem to be right, and why is that?" And he'd be asking all those tough questions that somebody's going to have to answer. And so, you know, I think focus on the life, whether it's the life that was or the life that will be, but focus on that more importantly than the materialistic things that, you know, could be coming your way as a result of that.
Thanks, Doug. I'm wondering, when having these conversations, is it helpful to have, if you're a religious person, maybe a Bible to refer to, or maybe some book that someone's written about the subject, and say, you know, in addition to what I'm sharing with you, I found this to be helpful. Maybe you want to read chapter 3.
You know, I do think that it does, like, it's not a bad idea to have a resource or reference material that you can, you know, sort of guide them towards, to be able to you know, obviously go through and better position them to deal with things. So I don't see, I'm fully supportive of, finding a book or books to go through and read. And, if you can find a good book that is actually somebody storytelling, where they're telling their story, and then it becomes something that's more relatable to you, I think that's a good path to go down. I know I'm finding out myself by some of the books that I've been reading lately that as long as there's a story to it, that it draws me in, it compels me to want to not put the book down and to keep reading. And I do see myself in a lot of their stories. So I think, there's definitely value in doing that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Do you think there is a difference between the generations on how certain aspects of losing someone impacts them? And what I mean by that is, and you and I've talked about this, someone in your home, they've passed away, let's get rid of all their stuff. We're getting rid of everything right away, the chair, the clothes, this, that. And some other people are like, it's a shrine. We're keeping the chair. You're not allowed to sit on it. The room is exactly how it used to be. Do you think that it depends on where you are in life in terms of what generation you're in, or do you think that has no bearing?
No, I think that it is, it's fueled by generations for sure, and how they deal with things. I know, and sometimes too, I think it's because I know that Deborah didn't want me to have to deal with getting rid of her clothing and all that stuff. She had actually had the conversations with her girls, as she called them, so her girlfriend and daughter-in-law, and to give specific instructions how she wanted things dealt with. So that was taken care of, and but could have I dealt with it? I know it would have been one of the toughest tasks that I've ever had to deal with. So I'm truly thankful and truly blessed that they were able to, respect Deborah's wishes and carry out what she had asked them to do, because it made my life a whole lot easier. So, and the clothing was one thing, but we, her girlfriend and I, we did a massive purging of stuff in the house that there was no reason for me to keep it any longer. And so it was even photographs. I mean, back, I think back, we used to take multiple copies or take multiple shots of different situations with the camera and that. And so it was a matter of going through and culling the herd, so to speak, and getting rid of some duplicates. In some cases it was triplicates and so on. But, just being able to do that was good.
Yes. And, I've actually heard people respond in another way when it comes to photographs, is that they don't want to see them for a certain amount of time has to go by before they can even look at the pictures, because it just brings things up. Do you think that that's generational as well, or it's really individualized?
I think it's more individualized because, I take a look at, I know my daughter has photos on her phone that are keepsakes of, different things that, she did with her mom and stuff like that. And I know I do now. I have photographs that I never used to keep, on my phone. In fact, I could probably count on one or two hands the number of photographs I used to have, and where now I'm probably 200 and something photographs, of various different things that were of significance and of importance. And so now I've got this digital library on my phone that I can flip to every so often when I kind of need that pick me up.
I love that. You said 200?
Yeah.
I think I have 8,000, Doug. You have. But
No.
it's interesting. For Father's Day, I typically will post something on Facebook, and my phone actually goes back to 2011 because of the iCloud. But I didn't have any pictures. I don't have any pictures of my dad on my phone when my dad was well. I have pictures of him when he was sick. And so I decided not to post anything this year because I want to remember him in a different way. And I wish that I had other pictures. And I think that that's also a great point. Take the pictures, people, get the pictures of people doing things and experiencing things together and the memories that you're creating. Because, and by the way, back them up also, right? Have them in multiple places.
Yeah, because you never know.
And there's actually one of our team members, Brenda, she actually helps people protect their photographs so that they're around forever, which is a great idea.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it is. So, Doug, we're coming to the end of our show. And of course, we have another show coming up. They always fly by so fast. You have your book there, and I'd love for you to read something. And if you want to preface it before you do, that would be great.
So this is, hopefully, there we go. Oh, no, there. So here's the book, You Are Not Alone. And the book itself is available on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. It is a Amazon #1 bestseller in North America and the UK. And it was the recipient of the Global Book Awards, the bronze medal for the Global Book Awards. So it's certainly got a lot of attention, and the sort of the storyline behind the book is it's about getting people to realize that mentoring can be part of the support structure for mental health, and that's kind of the sort of the shortened version of what the book is all about. And so if you've experienced this kind of bullying or harassment, you're not alone. People are challenged at work, home, and in life, dealing with strife in the workplace, depression, anxiety, most recently COVID, and many others. But there's still hope. Picture a world where there is little or no issues with mental health or mental well-being. Picture organizations where the prevention of mental health and the negative effects of mental health are dealt with right at the onset, benefiting the individual and the organization. Imagine organizations and their leaders creating a safe place for you to work in, and where prevention is the word rather than treatment. In this world, we have focused on the root cause of illness and have dealt with that without medication. In this world, your mentor is part of your support structure, standing beside you, not leaving you on the island by yourself. Your mentor is an active participant in your life, someone who will walk with you on your healing journey.
Wow, quite profound, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask for you to share with people how it is that you work with them and how they can contact you to work with you.
Definitely. I work with people in a number of different capacities as a mentor, but also as a mentor in the mental health space. So being part of the support structure in that. And for people to be able to, if that's not a good enough explanation for you, then please feel free to reach out to me. And you can do that, through my website at www.talentc.ca, and just go to the contact page and follow all the instructions, and you'll be able to get in touch with me. You can also reach me through LinkedIn. So I'm a fairly frequent LinkedIn user. So you can direct message me on LinkedIn. So just search on Doug Lawrence and you should be able to find it fairly easy. And then finally, having said all of that, probably the easiest possible way to get in touch with me is just send me an email at doug.lawrence@talentc.ca, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and we can have a conversation about what it is we can do together and where we both feel we'd like to go on our journey together and go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Doug. Thanks for being here. We'll be back in just over an hour for Stories of Hope, Inspiration, Overcoming Adversity. In between, it's Caroline Heward, the Harley Street stress expert, and she's going to be doing her Talking Heads episode. So Doug and I will see you shortly. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.